Thank you very much, Peter, for that warm introduction, and thank you for the invitation, and Howard, thank you as well. I'm very honored to be part of a panel with three people I have great respect for, Erwin, Mary Jo, and Karen as well. I teach a course here at Ryerson on transnational cooperation and human rights, and Erwin was so dead on about the culture of impunity that's happening, and a lot of it has to do, unfortunately, to do with dollars and petrodollars, and why we sometimes have very strange policies that doesn't always look after the individual, doesn't always look after the rights that we sometimes like to expose, but and instead looks at ways of making profits. The internet age has challenged and impacted privacy and the legal, social, and moral architecture of society, and by design has helped to both strengthen and weaken our democratic institutions. Due to rapid technological transformation, it has become difficult for governments to provide assurance of privacy to individual citizens. Technological advances has seen a proliferation of hackers who steal consumer data and misuse it for profit. At the same time, the threat of terrorism has instigated the use of new surveillance technologies to track and collect information on a massive, potentially threatening scale. Unrestricted mass surveillance has largely made the right of privacy irrelevant to government spy agencies. The current level of surveillance occurring in contemporary society is inconsistent with human rights and poses a challenge to our democracy. Canadians have important interests in privacy, which are intimately related to democratic ideas, such as the way power should be used and justified in society. From using the telephone to sending emails over the internet to our everyday financial transactions, Canadians' right to information privacy is in peril. Information regarding our every transaction is being digitalized through an ever-expanding number of computer networks in formats that allow data to be linked, transferred, shared, and sold, usually without our complicit knowledge or consent. The right to enjoyment of privacy in a democracy like Canada means having control over our own personal data and the ability to grant or deny access to others. Democracy requires opposing voices, and it requires the government misdeeds when they occur must be uncovered. If governments are spying on citizens and monitoring every conversation under some argument of national security, especially the monitoring of works by journalists, it weakens our democratic institutions. Governments need to keep in check and balance, and spying on Canadians weakens our democracy. Privacy is a necessary condition for democracy. Daniel Tyrion, the Privacy Commissioner of Canada, in his op-ed piece in January 2019, noted that privacy is nothing less than a prerequisite for freedom. The freedom to live and develop independently as a person, away from the watchful eye of surveillance state or commercial enterprise, while still participating voluntarily and actively in regular day-to-day activities of a modern society. Tyrion further notes how privacy breaches can adversely impact the exercise of our democratic rights. The massive accumulation of personal data by certain states and the commercial actors makes our democracies vulnerable to manipulation, including by foreign powers. He concludes by stating his disappointment on how the current elections has been no debate of any kind on strengthening our personal data protection laws. Privacy of an individual in a country is a primary duty of government. However, due to rapid transformation in technology, privacy has become a difficult task for governments to give assurance to their citizens, as the issue of surveillance is a matter of concern to privacy of the individual. Digital intelligence can be observed as when an individual decides to access anything on internet, mainly cookies or beacons that are traced by computers, by companies through the IP address. With the arrival of the smartphones to the market, the privacy of an individual is now almost constantly being surveilled or actually being spied upon. Technology is becoming more pervasive. Privacy is a fundamental human right which is recognized by the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and even by many other international treaties. Privacy hinges upon human dignity as well as freedom of expression or speech. Privacy has become one of the greatest concerns with respect to human rights in the modern age. The right to privacy is firmly anchored in international law and is included in the Universal Declaration, Article 12, and also the International Covenant on Civil and Political Rights, Article 17, which provides that no one shall be subject to arbitrary or unlawful interference with his privacy, family, home, or correspondence, no unlawful attacks on his honor and reputation. It further states that everyone has the right to protection of the law against such interference or attacks. While technology has improved our lives and communication and fostered greater participation in the global public sphere, it also exposed human rights abuses. At the same time, in the process, we have also become vulnerable to more surveillance and interference of our rights to privacy have been greatly diminished. Currently, surveillance threatens individuals' rights and inhibits the free functioning of a vibrant civil society. With the dawn of the digital age, communication technology has arguably made our lives easier, but also has made us vulnerable to a darker side of technology. The internet is once evolving communication medium and a new locus for social organization on a global basis. Due to the decentralization and interactive nature of the internet, it is the first electronic medium to allow every user to use, publish, or engage in commerce. Users can reach and create communities of interest despite geographical, social, and political barriers. The internet is an unprecedented mechanism for delivering government and social services, from education, healthcare, to public information. As the World Wide Web grows to fully support voice data and videos, it will become, even many respects, a virtual face-to-face social, political, and individual milieu. No issue highlights this any better than privacy, always a fluid and context situation concept, and more so now as the boundaries between being private and being public is shifting. Online digital communications are now part of the fabric of our everyday life. The information that users feel in the digital space cannot be obliterating completely. Moreover, with the pace with which technology is improving, hacking into one's private space isn't that difficult. There has been many cases that evidently prove that the privacy of an individual is just a click away from becoming public. The fast and momentous advances of online communication and information technology have distorted the lines between public and private sphere, and the massive state surveillance brings about the challenges to the legitimate parameters for national security and surveillance and its impact on the right to privacy of an individual. No doubt governments have a legitimate right to gather, restrict, and protect certain sensitive information. But in doing so, it must also guarantee that it's not abusing the right and that it is acting within the context of international human rights law. The increasing use of data mining by intelligence agencies blurs the boundaries between permissible targeted surveillance and problematic mass surveillance, which potentially amount to arbitrary or unlawful interference with privacy. The United Nations has increasingly expressed concern with modern forms of communication, surveillance, and their effects on human rights. In 2015, the resolution on privacy in the digital age, the Human Rights Council expressed deep concern at the massive impact that surveillance may have on the exercise and enjoyment of human rights, most notably the right to privacy. Many states during the Universal Periodic Review in 2015 stated that increased attention on issues of privacy in the digital age and the Human Rights Committee has also expressed serious concerns about surveillance powers by various states. In addition, the 2014 UN General Assembly resolution, The Right to Privacy in Digital Age, called on all states to review their procedures, practices, and legislation regarding the surveillance and communication, with a view to upholding the right to privacy by ensuring the full and effective implementation of all their obligations under international law. Notwithstanding the 2014 UN resolution, many states have been adopting laws that increase their intrusive powers of surveillance in ways that fall short of applicable international human rights standards. It was only here in Canada in the 1970s that countries began adopting broad laws intended to protect individual privacy. Through the world, there is a general movement towards the adoption of comprehensive privacy laws, setting a framework for protection. Most of these laws are based on models introduced by the Organization of Economic Cooperation, the Council of Europe. In 1995, the European Union passed the Directive on Data Protection, which directed protection of individuals with regards to the processing of personal data, and the free movement of such data sets a benchmark for national laws. Now, the directive also imposed obligation on member states to ensure that that covers laws to protect individuals and from these types of abuse. That law was further amended and adopted came into force in the new directive in May 2018 of last year, which further protects the privacy of all individual citizens of Europe, the European Union Economic Area as well. It also addresses the transfer of personal data outside the EU. The regulation aims primarily to give control to individuals over their personal data and to simplify the regulatory environment for international business by unifying the regulation within the European Union. The changes were necessary after the European Court of Justice May 13, 2014 decision on the Googles versus Costera case. That was the first time the court had used the right to be forgotten in its decision on the right of privacy. The court held that internet search engines operators is responsible for the processing that it carries out of personal information, which appears on a web page published by third parties. The outcome of the ruling is that an internet search engine must consider requests from the individual to remove links to freely accessible web pages resulting from a search of their name. Under certain conditions, the search engine may be ordered to remove the links from such results. Both the UN and the European Union have been looking to implement a mechanism to bring changes to the framework designed to maximize the safeguarding of personal privacy. A UN resolution was adopted in 2014 as well that states unlawful or arbitrary surveillance, interception of communication, collection of personal data, including metadata, are highly intrusive acts. As universal guardian of human rights, the UN plays a key role in defending the rights of privacy, as well as freedom of opinion and expression in the digital world. The increasing sophistication of information technology with its capacity to collect, analyze, and disseminate information on individuals has introduced a sense of urgency to the demand of legislations. Furthermore, new development in medical research and care, telecommunications, advanced transportation systems, and financial transfers have dramatically increased the level of information generated by each individual. There are many challenges with respect to the right to privacy that is guaranteed by legislative, administrative, and judicial authorities around the world. Although robust national frameworks are essential to ensure effective protection against unlawful or arbitrary interference, most national legislatures have not adopted such measures and have few, if any, independent oversights to review surveillance measures and the lack of effective enforcement as a safeguard against abuse. The UN has increasingly expressed concern on modern forms of communication, surveillance, and their effects on human rights. In Canada, as we know, we all have Canada has two major privacy laws. The privacy laws, which covers the personal information handling practice of federal government departments and agencies, and the Personal Information Protection Electronic Document Act, PIPDA. The Privacy Acts came into, along with the Access to Information Act, came into being in 1983 and July 1st. The purpose of this act is to extend the present laws of Canada that protect the privacy of individuals with respect to personal information about themselves held by government institutions, and it provides individuals with a right to access that information. That act also gives individuals the right to see the correct personal information held by the Government of Canada and protects unauthorized uses and disclosure of that information. The Privacy Act was enacted by the Canadian Parliament to regulate collective use and disclosure of personal information by federal government institutions, thereby respecting the privacy rights of individuals. It imposes restrictions on 150 federal government departments and agencies. The Privacy Act imposes fair information obligations on the federal government in terms of how it collects, uses, and discloses personal information under its control. It puts in place an independent ombudsman, the Privacy Commission, to resolve problems and oversee compliance and legislation. In addition to investigating complaints covered by the Privacy Act, the Privacy Commissioner can conduct audits of the fair information practice of government institutions and carry out special studies referred to the Commissioner by the Minister of Justice. The nature of privacy and security from time to time has been unwilling to renounce some of our most basic rights to privacy by allowing technology in our private space, and our governments and others have utilized instruments like cameras, monitoring, etc., to monitor our every and survey every action. In many respects, we have created our own Big Brother. Our tradition of privacy and democracy and freedom must be protected, or what is the point of working to protect our society? Thank you very much.